Today's show is going to be different. I'm not going to do the news. I'm going to be very real about what my life has been like in the last week. As some of you may have seen on social media or in our newsletter, a ballistic missile from Iran landed at my apartment Monday morning at 4 a.m., destroying the building, decimating my apartment, and entirely ruining the Israel Daily News recording studio. Most of my belongings are gone or damaged. I do not have a home anymore. Let me take you through my story. I finished my news show, the Israel Daily News podcast, which you're listening to now, overnight, Sunday into Monday. I had pushed all of my regular programming up a day because the war intensified on Friday when Israel started to work on taking down Iran's nuclear program through various sites around the enormous country of Iran. When Iran struck back, Israelis could really feel it on their home front and in their residential communities. I had returned from spending the afternoon covering the destruction in Bat Yam at 9 p.m. and then produced the podcast all evening, hitting the publish button at 3:50 in the morning. I'll admit that I've been nervous to go to sleep with these alarms ringing out throughout the evening, and I'm a late night person anyway, so I've just been working incredibly late since the war began. I sat on my bed and sighed some relief after I published the show. It was my first show since Iran had entered the game, and it was released, and it was time for me to unwind. I started to change into my pajamas, and just in that moment, a siren rang out from the Homefront Command application on our cell phones. I downloaded it early on in the war. It alerts us when and if to expect missiles. I had just reported to everyone that those who did not survive the Bat Yam hit had not put themselves in the protected spaces. I also reported that the Israel police is urging the public to wear closed-toed shoes to bomb shelters. I, however, did not have enough time to grab a pair and instead opted for Velcro sandals that were within reach and were going to take me less time to get on my feet. I ran upstairs to my neighbor Marisa, who had a mamad, that's safe room in English. I knocked on the door. She opened it for me, thank God, and let me in. I stood in her doorway and waited to enter the safe room with everyone, which was on the first floor of her 2-story apartment. A mamad, by the way, is a reinforced cement room that is meant to keep you safe. It's much safer than your typical walls. There were 2 women in one room and a young woman from Paris in the other. I would say she was between 16 and 20 years old, and she had been visiting Israel. She was sleeping in the mamad, and we all entered that room where she was sleeping because that was the protected space, so we had to wake her up. It was late and everyone was sleepy, so Marisa kept the lights off. I began rolling audio. Just a hunch. Marisa and Alana, the other 2 women I mentioned, began reciting psalms, and it sounded almost like a strange witch chant to me.
The protector of Israel neither sleeps nor slumbers.
I kept myself very quiet. I was managing my energy and listening to what was going on outside. Some people like to make conversation in the safe room. I prefer to listen to the sounds, to the booms. I want to know what's going on. Just moments after I hit record on my phone, the missile whizzed and whipped by.
The guardian of Israel never sleeps nor slumbers.
I felt it go past our building with force. Then we heard an enormous boom. This is the loudest boom that I have heard in this war, and I've heard a lot.
Okay, come. No, okay, come. It's all right.
Shh, we have to hear what's going on.
What?
We have to hear what's going on.
Sarah.
The knob for the mamad window, which closes and tightens that window, flew off and shot across the room. The building swayed. I held my breath. It came back to settle in place. The Parisian girl, Sarah, who had been visiting Israel, had become hysterical. She screamed. She was crying. She was sobbing. I understood that either our building had been hit or a building next door had been hit, and I wanted her to be quiet. I wanted everyone to be quiet. I held myself back from uttering impatient words. I told them that we all needed to be quiet so we could listen to what was going on. I knew that we had been hit. I knew things were not going to be pretty. At one point, Marisa discussed leaving her mamad and in one way or another alluded to the rest of our building. She started talking about the rest of our building, to which I replied, yeah, if there is any building left, it might just be us up here in the mamad. She laughed. But I imagined our little room on floor 5 just floating in the air, being held up by skinny rods. That was my vision. Well, my imagination was not too far off. The missile had touched down in the parking lot outside of my home. Meters, it made its landing. Both my bedroom and my living room window face where the missile came down. The mamad we were in quickly became full of concrete dust, soot, and smoke. We got an all clear from the home front command application that it was time for us to leave, but I thought it was probably not for people like us. We for sure had been hit. I was the first person to get up and open the mamad door, and I found the place in tatters. There was sheetrock from the ceiling on the floor, a chandelier hanging, and the front door was dented in and could not be moved. We were locked inside. My partner, named Raphael, called me on my cell phone. Thank God I had been responsible about charging it in case of emergency during this war. I texted him that I believed we were close to the site of the rocket hit, and he agreed that I was. He told me that he was already downstairs and that my building looked messed up. I did not want to hear that. He had jumped on a scooter right after getting the all clear from the home front command and leaving his safe space, coming by scooter across town to make sure that I was okay. He called me from outside of the building and said that he was working to get emergency service officers to come upstairs and get us. A number of people tried the front door but couldn't open it. In fact, people kept telling us to unlock it, which was infuriating because it was clearly dented by the impact of the hit and not because we had locked it from the inside. Some emergency service soldiers came up, called out to us, and after we responded, busted the door down. Had Raphael not notified them, they would not have known we were trapped inside. They put the door on its side and instructed me and the other women to walk around it. There was an assembly line of soldiers helping us out of the apartment and down the stairs. There was glass everywhere. Every window had been shattered. Every door was rocked. Before leaving Marisa's apartment, I asked her to give me socks. She didn't have any in the room we were in, but she did have these thin slippers. I put them on under my sandals to shield my feet from the glass, remembering what the Israel police had warned us about. The Israel police, by the way, also warned us to expect to need to rely on family and friends for clothing and etc. if a rocket were to hit, and that's exactly what I had to do. They also told us to bring our documents in with us, and I brought my passports with me because I remembered their warning. I was so glad that I did. And by the way, protecting my feet was a very good idea. There was a flood and a leak in the building. Water was sprinkling from a burst that piped from a burst pipe that opened over my head as I exited, and I walked under it. As I walked past my apartment, which was down a long hallway, floors below, I tilted my head to have a quick little peek. Raphael had insisted that I not look into my apartment or try to go into it. He said I just needed to get out of the building safely. Well, I saw that the door was busted up and it looked like a wreck from the part that I could see. I could also see that there was a flood. I walked outside on my own, outside of the building on my own, and there was a scene down there. Dawn was breaking. Reporters swarmed the area. Civilians behind police tape looked shocked. Shop owners were in despair. Everyone was in distress. There was glass and debris everywhere. I looked to my right and saw Raphael and a friend of mine named Zena waiting for me behind a police line at the edge of the block on the street. I walked directly into the arms of Raphael. And CNN caught it on camera as well. I was concerned about being in my pajamas in the street full of cameras. That was my concern. He was teary-eyed and grateful I was alive. He later told me that when he initially showed up to the building, he saw bloodied people on the floor, and he wasn't sure what my status was. I did not want to be photographed at this time, though I had been ready from the day before. I had hair and makeup done from being on the scene in Bat Yam, but I just didn't feel like I was ready to face the world. I felt like I was in my pajamas, like I was vulnerable. I saw CNN's Jeremy Diamond, whom I mentioned, and allowed him to question me. It was the last thing that I wanted to do, but I put my shoulders back and did what I felt I had to do as a journalist in that moment. After this, I spoke with some of my neighbors, some friends were nearby, and I checked that my neighbors were okay. Everyone in my building made it out alive because we had all been in our safe rooms in our mamads, and that's really when my journey began. The first stop was to Raphael's friends who live really nearby. We knocked on their door, woke them up, used their bathroom, had a glass of water, sat down, and most importantly, I let their small, tiny puppy jump into my arms and give me some much-needed love. The second stop was to my dear friend Nicole. Around the time that we got the all clear when we were in the mamad, she had told me that I could come at any point because I had communicated to her that smoke was coming into my room and I thought something was going on, that our building had been hit. Well, Nicole opened her door with one eye open. It was just around 7 a.m., and I asked her to make me some breakfast. I spent some time playing with her 1-year-old baby, and get this, she walked across the living room to me for the first time ever. I was disheveled. My hair had concrete powder in it, but there I was, clapping for the baby to let her know that she had done a great job walking over to Auntie Shanna across the room. I cried a little. It was the first time that I had seen her walk, and she walked to me. And it was a good moment, even in the middle of this chaos, even though I was filthy and felt horrible. After breakfast, I went into Nicole's room to shop in her closet because all the clothes that I had was what I was wearing on my body. I then laid on a makeshift bed that she had put together for herself in the safe room next to the baby's crib. It's a tiny little room in her apartment. And I realized that she had been sleeping on the floor in there next to her baby. She showed me the clothes that she was sending me off with. She put them in a bag, and I laid down, and at some point I succumbed to a strong sleep right there on the floor. When I got up an hour later, Nicole encouraged me to shower, and that was everything that I needed. I then started my return to my apartment to go look at the damage, and it was shocking. My apartment was one of the worst hit in the building, and it was in the line of fire. The ceiling was on the floor. Everything was destroyed. As soon as I walked through my apartment door, I noticed that the jewelry box was near the front door on a vanity table that I have. It was entirely emptied out and looted. I lost items that family and friends gave me, and many of them are no longer with us, and I've been holding on to their gifts as a way to remember them. My heart sank. I mentioned this to my next door neighbor, and she realized that her jewelry box had been looted as well. Most things in my home were ruined by the intense blast. However, at a later time, I was able to recover some items, some clothing, some books, and hopefully I'll be able to get my dining room table. Much of the things that survived were things that were tucked away inside of closed drawers or closets. With the help of friends who happened to be outside looking at the damage when Raphael and I rolled up, we began going through the apartment. We welcomed them in. These were the guys that we went to earlier in the day that lived nearby. Without communicating with them, they were outside my apartment at the same time as us, and they came in with us. I took important items with me, afraid of being looted further. My laptop, which I have cautiously been zippering up in a bag and putting behind the couch since the start of this war, was saved. The bag was wet from the burst pipe, but the bag had absorbed the majority of the moisture. What a miracle. I looked over at the window. My morning prayer card was resting in the spot where I usually stand and pray with it. That's not where I keep it, though. I keep it on the other side of the room. I just want to take a moment here to say I've had a lot of visions in the last years, and in general, I have a lot of strong intuitions about things. And in the last year and a half, I have envisioned an Iranian attack blowing in my window in my living room. And because of that vision, every time I leave my room, every time I leave my apartment, I zipper closed my laptop. It is my prized possession, and it is what I use to work. And I would rest it up against the side of the couch away from the window. And I've been doing this to keep it safe. And that vision came true. And I saved my computer because I followed that vision, that imagination that I was seeing in my mind. And by the way, I just want to take a moment here to say, before October 7th happened, I was having visions at night that Hamas terrorists were entering my front door. I would say 3 to 4 months after that was October 7th. I just want to encourage everyone to go with your instincts, to listen to your gut, to recognize that we are humans and we are animals and we have animal instincts, and they're not silly. They're real. Finally, we went to Raphael's apartment. We sat there, we ate. I rested for 30 minutes, but had a rude awakening. I'd organized a team of close friends and a cousin to come to the apartment and help clean and pack me up. My EMT cousin called a contact of his with a pickup truck in Tel Aviv, and he was able to come over and pick up all my dirty suitcases and dusty duffel bags that we filled up with my items. We took them to the apartment of a very nice woman who is out of the country and offered to let us use her place. I'm sitting in it right now. I've been using it to do laundry, to work. She's not here, and she was happy to let me use her home as a little point where I could reorganize myself and regroup. I didn't believe that there was anything in my apartment that was going to have survived. The damage was huge. The impact was meters away. My door was blown in. I saw things hanging from the ceiling. My sheets were vaporized off the bed. A wooden chair was blown into smithereens. I used to have 4. Now I have 3, but I don't know where the 4th one went. I just saw little itsy bitsy pieces of it. There are pieces of clothes, bags of clothes that are non-existent. Some things in my apartment, poof, they vanished. They vaporized by this ballistic missile. At the end of the day, after all of this was over, we went back to Raphael's apartment, just him and I, and we were thinking about going to sleep when I got a call from the city of Tel Aviv at 11 p.m. They offered me to go to a local hotel that had been assigned to me. I took it because my friends encouraged me to, and I moved out. I am so glad that I accepted the offer for this hotel because the meals are provided. There are city employees on site who help me every day. Since the incident, I've been filling out paperwork, making claims, calling the electric company, trying to recover things, wash them, clean them, and the nightmare goes on. I'm still working on getting my life cleaned up. My beloved TV studio, which I spent years accruing equipment for, and then 1 year working by hand with the help of friends and colleagues, has been destroyed and dismantled. The sound panels that I made by hand with foam and fabric I picked out are destroyed. They came down off my walls. My equipment was toppled down by a closet inside the room. The closet fell on it. Things are broken. I'm working with the best of the best equipment that I have been able to recover, and some things that people gave me and some things that I dug up from years and years ago that are outdated, but I'm using them to get this broadcast out. A lot of my broadcast clothes that I've invested in were soaked, stinking, and I'm still not sure which pieces of my equipment and machinery are working. I'll tell you, as I tried to put this together, I figured out what's working and what's not working. As I put together this podcast, I figured it out. I found things broken. I found things not working. We will continue to provide news updates on social media and work to release podcasts from wherever we are. But without my studio, without my equipment, and without my home, producing materials is extra challenging, and it takes extra long. Iran has been firing ballistic missiles at Israel around the clock. Restaurants are closed, gyms are closed, school is closed, gathering in general is closed. People are going home around 8 p.m. to prepare themselves for a night of missiles. No one is sleeping. I have been running to the bomb shelter between 2 and 4 times a day for more than a week. And in the middle of that, I'm working to recover my life and hoping that my home doesn't get bombed again. And when I say home, I'm talking about my hotel or the place where I'm storing and working from. Overnight and in the early morning, I'm abruptly shocked into consciousness when my cell phone shrieks security alerts of incoming missiles. Then we have a minute and a half to run down 4 flights of stairs into the bomb shelter at the hotel. In the bomb shelter, I'm surrounded by other displaced people who are living in the hotel. And let me tell you, it's getting filled up more and more with each passing day. I was amongst the first batch of people to get hit by a rocket. And at this point, the hotel is pretty packed with people who've lost their homes as the days go by. I'm not sure where I will go or what I will do, but I have to thank my close circle, my family, my friends, the international community of Tel Aviv, and the listeners of the Israel Daily News for helping us to raise funds for a new place and hopefully a new studio. Again, I spent upwards of a year hand making it and making it the perfect place to record. And I was even able to make a big change in the last year. I was able to raise the show from an audio podcast to a video podcast where you can see video on YouTube and Spotify at this point. And with those videos, I'm making clips for our social media. I intend to keep going with your help, with your blessing, and with your support. I have been feeling very grateful to be alive and looking forward to making the Israel Daily News even bigger than it was before. Our website, israeldailynews.org, does have a donate button on it if you would like to be a part of the rebirth of the Israel Daily News. We're hoping to be bigger and badder. People keep asking me if I want to move back to New York where I was originally born. The answer is no. The Jewish people have been waiting for 2,000 years in exile, and we finally have our homeland back, and I am not only proud to be a part of it, but thrilled to continue building it.